Morning, everybody. Michelle is here. People not paying attention in traffic. My goodness. I'm here November 12th, 2025. November 12th, 2025. This year is going by pretty fast, it's already November. So, and I'm winding down this year with progress, some disappointments, which I knew I would have those, but you have to experience disappointments as well as victories and all those other things that you are expecting. The disappointments are just as valuable as the victories. Sorry, I'm so distracted. There's a lot going on in this neighborhood where I'm currently, my temporary location here, and it's just a lot of chaos because they're doing construction. They're fixing roads. Some roads they have fixed, and I put videos out. I think this year there's a particular road that I'll be heading to that they may have fixed that road 10 times this year, meaning they've had to bring out construction equipment, vehicles, traffic cones, and blah 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 to fix this particular road. But yet I see other roads where they're not really receiving that kind of attention. They're receiving this kind of incomplete process of road construction and so forth and so on. And so we all know what that's all about. So there's no need to, be so concerned about it, because we know you can be concerned, but what are you going to do about it? And those are the questions we have to ask ourselves about certain things that are happening. What are we going to do about it? That's what's important. What are we going to do about it? So I'm headed out to run some errands. It's nice and cool, but I already feel like I need to take off this sweatshirt, because I like the cool air. It makes me feel alive. But I just wanted to come on through, put out some content, document some things, talk and ramble. And I suggest this for everyone. Just put the content out. I do not have time, I'm going to be real honest, to listen to everybody's, whether it's their podcast, their poll, or read their posts. Honestly, to read their books, sorry. I just have so much going on right now. And I was talking to someone, I was talking about this yesterday, about how I know for a fact, and I'm not attempting to offend anybody, but nobody's reading a goddamn thing. I said this a couple of years ago. Nobody's reading anything, okay? Now, because there's reasons for it. It's dangerous to read in certain environments these days. You can't go into a library per se and read in peace, because usually libraries were being invaded. I haven't been in a library in a few years, because I stopped going into the libraries because they were being invaded. Okay, they were being invaded. They were not being invaded by people that actually were coming to the library to read and check out books. It turned into a babysitting as well, okay, for certain people, and we don't need to say who. We know who they are. It was like a babysitting environment, and they called it a protection zone and all this other BS. So I stopped going in there. And then, I discovered as well that a lot of things in the library, nobody's going to admit this as well, is inaccurate. A lot of it is outdated. And in light of artificial intelligence, libraries are becoming irrelevant, sadly. That's a sad thing to say. But unless you can revamp the library in a way that brings it up to date, Okay, some of those books in those libraries are wrong. Some of those books are propaganda. Some of those books have inaccurate calculations, information, and and some of it is just pure junk. Okay, around the times, I think it was when we started. I think it started around online ordering of books, but it may have started even before then. With our busy lives, and that's another thing. Our lives is extremely busy. Everybody's lives is busy, and there's some extreme dangers going on as well. So again, I'm documenting things. But anyway, the library is becoming irrelevant for accurate content. Okay, now anybody can write a book. I can remember there's someone that I thought, okay, and then everybody started jumping on the bandwagon. Release a book, because they knew people weren't reading those books. Books are now decorative items. And I know a lot of people get all upset about that. I'm not going to argue with no one about that. It's logical, rational, and reasonable to conclude people are not reading. They're not reading books. Let's put it that way. So that's why people can release a book after book after book after book. It's a part of a marketing scheme. It's a marketing, I don't know, it's just a marketing scheme. It's a marketing practice. Release a book. It doesn't matter what's in it. Just release it, and then you get people who are who will attempt to get you on stage somewhere, get you talking somewhere, get you on someone's podcast. It's a marketing scheme. And sadly, there are some people who do not recognize that. They do not accept that because they're so gullible, And usually they're super religious. Super religious people are usually extremely gullible. And they're the ones that get easily taken advantage of too, by the way. But they won't admit that either. So when it comes to books, like I said, nobody's reading books. They're decorative items. Now, what people are doing now is going to artificial intelligence. What happened with artificial intelligence, all of those inaccurate books have been uploaded to artificial intelligence. And so artificial intelligence is an attempt to make it logical and make it reasonable. And they're running into issues. Okay, they're running into issues. They're figuring out things that I just said. That most of that stuff is garbage. It doesn't add up. Some of the formulas are wrong. Some of the calculations are wrong in some of these books. Most of it is theories and opinions. Those books, they're supposed to be scientific. They're not. They're theories and opinions. And what we were supposed to do is somehow, like I said earlier in my videos, with theories and opinions, they're supposed to open up conversations to bring them to factual. But instead, they've turned into everyone just putting out their theories and opinions. If we were not so focused on theories and opinions as we have been for almost 100 years or more, Einstein's theory would have been cultivated properly and would have advanced further. As we know it, and no scientist wants to admit this as well. Einstein's theory is mute. It's you can say it's stuck, or it's just in a perpetual spin and not going anywhere. It's perpetually spinning, not going anywhere. Nothing has advanced from what he said. He said something that was profound, okay, but nothing has progressed any further than that. So it's essentially turning itself into, okay. Theories and opinion. God, some of these people who do not understand the traffic laws. That's why it's so important. I mean, I'm going to be bouncing all over the place. Keep up if you want to. It's just documentation anyway. But most people do not understand laws and regulations, ordinance. They don't understand them at all. They don't realize certain things ought to have a logical, rational, and reasonable implication. It ought to make fucking sense. Good grief. But anyway, so that's why Einstein's theory is just dead in the water, per se. It's a great theory, but our so-called pseudoscientists do not know how to think out of that. They just like to stay in that physical reality of what he said and not being able to expand it into what it means as a form of energy. You know, it's a form of energy, but it's not just physical energy. Okay? But, you know, let scientists, you know, continue to deal with that. You know, our scientists, and I've said it, are pseudoscientists. They're getting paid very well to not disclose certain things. They get paid very well. They get paid very well to entertain us online, entertain us on the social media platform. Science ought to be fun, but science ought to be as well accurate and ought to be right. It's not entertaining. Scientists, you know, you can entertain us, but you need to give us the facts and you need to give us the truth and not stop hiding things. You know, a lot of people, you know, I know a lot of scientists were threatened, which makes sense, and their technology was stolen. For example, with Tesla was not only threatened, he was unalived. That won't be admitted, and his technology was stolen. So I understand the dangers with certain scientists but you need to be creative. Okay, you're a goddamn scientist. Be creative and put out the right information, but do it in a creative fashion. You know, and think critical. You know, everybody talking about how you're supposed to think critically. All right, just be conscious about how you're thinking. Just be conscious. So, but yeah, a lot is going on in my world. That's why I like my rambling videos. I get on here and ramble about everything. Some of it appears relevant, but in most cases, it's all relevant. All right? It all comes together eventually. Breadcrumbs. I told you I give you breadcrumbs in these videos where you can figure it out on your own. I have a lot of trust in people that can think for themselves and figure things out. I have a lot of trust in that because that's the natural course of how we're supposed to, you know, do our thing. Yeah, we're supposed to think for ourselves and figure it out. And that will give you the most joy in your life when you figure things out on your own. You think about it critically, you know, if you like that word, or you can think about it consciously. Okay, you're being kind and gentle with yourself when you realize you were made a fool of, whether it was in your adolescence, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. You're realizing you were told a lie about certain things, that certain concepts of our realities were nothing more, nothing less than fallacies. And a lot of it was intentionally indoctrination and wrong, intentionally. It was intentionally projected to us as wrong. It was not necessarily truth, and that was the whole intention. Like the space shuttle that I think it was 1969, that fake moon landing, that first fake moon landing. You know, it won't be admitted. But if you think critically about it, you know, you'll understand why can't we get back there now? And we had this so-called less advanced technology. And who's to say that we're not there? That's another question to ask. Who's to say that we're not on the moon or we're not on Mars? Who's to say that? When I lived on a certain region of the world, there was constant activities in the skies, I should say. Constant. And the news media is a part of these fabrications, these indoctrinations these manufactured, the news media, these major news outlets create manufactured news so that they can get the correct amount of attention away from here and place it there, place it here. I told you back in the 70s, I think it was, there was a major, major earthquake that took place on a certain continent, and thousands of people were killed because of this earthquake. And it wasn't mentioned, not even in the books. It's not even in the history books that this earthquake took place. But so-called everything else is there. So the news media, a lot of people are picking this up. That's why we have a lot of independent news journalists, which I like that. I really do. But you do have to be creative. You do have to be careful. Okay, you need to protect yourself from certain things that are happening with independent journalism, because that is a threat. Okay, and so I need to put this out and make this very clear. It is fantastic that we have a lot of these independent journalists, but a lot of them are in danger. Some of them have been compromised. Some of them are receiving fees from political figures. We just figure it out. Some are leaning to the left and leaning to the right. All this carrying on, with the politics. Politicians are involved with some of these independent journalistic, social media stars. They're funding their expenses. They're providing them with base income or resources to provide for themselves. Okay, don't be so naive about that. At the same time, again, some of these so-called independent journalists are in danger, their safety, and they don't recognize that. So pay attention to, the company you keep. Pay attention to the content that you're putting out, and just make sure you're being safe about it. Don't attempt to be the first one. That's the problem too as well. Everybody wants to be on top and be the first to make breaking news and all this crap. Take away that kind. First of all, think about why you're doing certain things. I told you why I do things and what my purpose is, and it's coming along better than I thought. And that's the beauty of when you evolve yourself. Sometimes you have no idea, what the outcomes are going to be in certain places and certain things you do in your life. You just don't know the outcome. But sometimes, you're going to have some good days, bad days. You're going to have some failures. Remember, failures, errors, and then you're going to have breakthroughs. Okay, I sense a breakthrough. And, that is what's bringing me so much joy. I sense a breakthrough in all the things that I've done. But at the same time, I know that it's difficult because, like I said, we are in a physical bottleneck. The bottleneck is physical. Hear me carefully. The bottleneck is physical. It actually exists. It's a form of energy. It's a form of criminal negative energy. So you really need to, do everything you can to self-educate yourself about what's really going on. There's a lot of things going on behind the surface, behind the scenes, the backstories, always, always, always. And so I'm thankful I'm putting out that type of information. I'm documenting what is happening in my life just in case something happens again as it was happening in 2022. I just want to make sure things are documented. I sense a form of protection. Now, is that delusional, illusionary? Time will tell. I feel a form of protection from silent supporters. And, nobody has to know who they are. I have no idea who they are. And I don't really need to know. I appreciate their support. I appreciate their doing what they can to disseminate the truth out there and be creative. Some creators have a lot more, what's the word, breathing room, right? They have so many people that are usually following them. If something were to so if something were to happen to them, it would be noticeable, but not if it happens to me. I have a small following, which I can care less about. And not that I can care less about it. I told you the manipulations with these following and likes. Okay, it's all an economic algorithm with these likes and followers. Okay, there's some intentional created artificial intelligence behind the likes and followers. But most people don't want to hear that. You remember bots, BOTS, back in the beginning when Twitter was around? Okay, that was artificial intelligence, by the way. But, and also when I talk to certain people, a lot of them, it's a revelation for them. But a lot of them are extremely aware sometimes. There are some innately inclined people that I talk to. Innately inclined. I told you who are predominantly innately inclined. You know who they are. They know who they are. And so they are, but then there are some that I am extremely disappointed in. Because they're so in the position of defending themselves, and they're not understanding they don't have to do that. You're innately inclined. You know what you know. But anyway, so yes, I sense some breakthroughs in my life. I sense things coming. Things are happening as I visualize. Whenever, and also it's just the alignment of things. My life is aligned properly. Does that mean that everything's going to come through? Especially when it comes to certain aspects of your existence. I told you there's a failure with the interpersonal relationships. There's a failure there. And it's a lot of it to do with is communication. We're so massively overpopulated. And with our massive overpopulation, we believe we have a lot of choices. That's not true at all. All because there's a massive amount of people doesn't mean you're going to have a better choice of people. What that means is you're going to have a better choice or abundance of some of the same type of toxic people you thought you were, you thought you had gotten over. So anyway, I'll probably come back later and talk some more about, what's going on in my life. I'm very happy. I am busy. I have a lot going on. There's a lot happening. And so that's why I say you have, with those of you out there who are discovering and snapping the fuck out of it and realizing, make sure you're being safe about it. Again, just because you snap out of it, let's put it this way. When you snap out of it, there may be a form of anxiety that may come over you because you're going to realize, oh my God, what in the world? So be kind and gentle with yourself and do not focus so much on, being fearful. Just know that you're being aware. Something was happening all along. It's been happening for thousands of years, millions of years. I mean, it's just nothing's really new about what we are experiencing now. It's just now more people are waking up and realizing that we're going over a cliff. And for some people, you may still go over that cliff. Even when you snap out of it. You still may go over a cliff. You may be involved in some catastrophic weather event, unfortunately, such as flooding. I think flooding causes the most damage because it can just show up. You may not even see a drop of rain, but immediately you notice there's flooding. Let me move to another spot. The sun. So just because you snap out of it, it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to deal with the cause and effects, unfortunately. I know somebody was saying something about somebody is trying to change the intent. What is it? Consequences. Well, those people who attempt to interfere with the consequences, those are the ones who are arrogant, cocky, illogical, irrational, and unreasonable, because they think they're gods. They think they can go in and change the consequences of things after they caused it. Honey, it's already set in motion. Okay, so a lot of them are going to be extremely, extremely disappointed when they realize, with them fucking with the intended consequences, how they are making things worse. But again, allow people to face their consequences. Allow people to reap what they have sown. There are so many people out there who think they're God. They're highly favored. They're blessed. They think they're God. They think they're a God image. And they don't think about how illogical that is. And a lot of people are waking up from that too. And that's the most thankful I've if it's real, I sense it as real. But again, time will tell on that. Results will tell. Consequences will tell. A lot of people are realizing, okay, why am I following this path of life? Why am I following that path of life? They're exposing this contradiction of religion, of all faiths, all walks of religion. A lot of people are saying, well, wait a second. So again, I tell you, I was thankful. Looks like there's rain coming. Yeah, I was thankful with my upbringing. Yes, there was churches on every corner. In black communities, back when I was growing up, that's what you saw, church on every corner. Okay, and the purpose, well, I think a lot of people are figuring things out about all of that, and how if they were operating as they claim to be, so many people wouldn't be struggling right now. But the damage has been done. We've allowed people to get away with stuff for decades upon decades, maybe even thousands of years. We've allowed certain walks of life, to live in the lap of luxury while you're out in the cold. So many people are going to be homeless. Okay, you will. And those are the ones that were so faithful. You claim you got this faith. They may have money in the bank right now, but money can be used. Money is an illusion based on how you think about it. Okay, we have these monopoly money, crypto, Bitcoin. So just those of you who, if you choose to, remember free will. What I said about free will. Anybody denying you of the reality of free will is attempting to indoctrinate you, and they want you asleep. They don't want you to wake up. They don't want you woke. Okay, they want you indoctrinated. They want you to be their slaves. And so they're going to be using artificial intelligence to really ramp up that slave mentality. And in some phases of it, if you're not thinking clearly and effectively, you're going to fall for it every time, because you're you're capturing. You're caught up in these bells and whistles and these fantasies of artificial intelligence, fantasy of gaming online, whatever people are doing with their brains and their minds and their consciousness and their thoughts. It's just going to get worse for them, and you can't reach them. So do what you can to reach what you can. There's almost 10 billion people on this planet. Okay, and we are not going to be able to reach all of them. So just be kind and gentle with yourself. Make sure you're grounded. Make sure you're solid. Make sure your finances are in order. Make sure you have backup plans. Where you're going to go if this happens, what you're going to do if this happens, blah, 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 blah. And especially those with kids. If you have, even one or more child, and then on top of that, people with animals. So there's going to be some devastation. There are going to be some catastrophic events. Because like I said, when the flood comes, all you can save is yourself. That's all you can save. You can hold on to someone for only so long. Whereas eventually, the flood is going to take over and sweep you to parts unknown. So, not to give a dire negative ending here, but this is reality. Actually, there's nothing negative about what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is neutrally positive, which means it has some good, bad, and ugly. Okay, so make sure you have good and bad and ugly in your life as well. If everything is constantly going your way, you're going to be hitting the wall before you know it, and you're going to believe that you've done everything you're supposed to do. No, you were not thinking properly. You wanted everything to be your way or no way, and you weren't really willing to, to accept some tips and suggestions or breadcrumbs from others like myself. So let me go. My skin looks so dry because the temperature is changing. But I'm going to go ahead and send peace and love all over the stars and moon and mountains. Now, remember, universal love was always inclusive. We divided it and turned it into a commodity.